This episode is presented to you in the form of an audiobook. As the book of Ruth ends, we are left with a quiet, tender moment. Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed. Obed becomes the father of Jesse, and Jesse will one day become the father of David. The final lines of Ruth draw a gentle thread between a simple family story and the unfolding of a much greater plan. It's here that the seeds of kingship in Israel are sown, not in a throne room, but in the home of a widow and a farmer in the town of Bethlehem. Now, the book of 1 Samuel picks up generations later with the people of Israel restless, their tribal confederation unstable, and their hearts longing for leadership. The story begins not with a king, but with a woman in quiet anguish, whose pain will open the door to the prophet who will anoint the first kings of Israel. There was a man named Elkanah from Ramathaim, a town in the hill country of Ephraim. He came from a respected lineage and was a Levite by background, even though he lived in Ephraim's territory. Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. This detail sets the emotional and spiritual tone immediately. Hannah's barrenness isn't just a family matter, it becomes the aching center of the chapter. Every year, Elkanah would travel with his family to Shiloh to worship and offer sacrifices to the Lord of hosts. This was before the temple in Jerusalem existed, so the tabernacle in Shiloh was the central place of worship. It was here that the priest Eli served, and his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were also priests of the Lord. The mention of these sons at this point is subtle but purposeful. They will reappear in darker circumstances. Whenever Elkanah offered a sacrifice, he gave portions of meat to Peninnah and her children. But to Hannah, he gave a double portion because he loved her, even though the Lord had closed her womb. This tender gesture from Elkanah shows he was a loving husband, but it could not erase Hannah's sorrow. Peninnah, perhaps feeling superior, would provoke and mock Hannah harshly. She would remind her constantly of her barrenness, and this happened year after year during the family's visit to Shiloh. Hannah would weep and refuse to eat, and Elkanah, clearly frustrated but loving, would try to comfort her. "Hannah, why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? His words show his devotion, but they miss the depth of her spiritual longing. One year, after a meal at Shiloh, Hannah stood up and went to the tabernacle. She was deeply troubled and began to pray to the Lord, weeping bitterly. She made a vow, saying, "O Lord of hosts, if you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to you all the days of his life, and no razor shall ever touch his head." This was a Nazirite vow, a total dedication of the child to God. As Hannah prayed silently, her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Eli the priest saw her and thought she was drunk. He rebuked her, saying, "How long will you go on being drunk? Put away your wine." But Hannah answered humbly, "No, my lord, I am a woman deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord." She asked Eli not to regard her as a worthless woman, explaining that she had been praying from deep sorrow and anxiety. Eli, realizing his mistake, changed his tone. He said kindly, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." Encouraged, Hannah returned to her family. Her face was no longer downcast, and she began to eat again. The family rose early the next morning, worshipped the Lord, and went back home to Ramah. In time, the Lord remembered Hannah. She conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, "Because I asked the Lord for him." After the child was weaned, Hannah did something remarkable. She told Elkanah that she would take Samuel to the tabernacle to present him to the Lord and leave him there forever. When the time came, she brought the boy, along with a sacrifice, and presented him to Eli. She reminded Eli of the moment he saw her praying. "I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he shall be given over to the Lord." And there, in that sacred place, Samuel began his lifelong service before the Lord. Hannah didn't leave Samuel in Shiloh with a heavy heart. Instead, she lifted her voice in a beautiful and prophetic prayer. She said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In him my horn is lifted high." She praised God's power and justice, saying that he brings the proud low and raises the humble. The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises. Her song acknowledged that God sees the unseen, hears the cries of the weak, and overturns the power of the mighty. It was a declaration that her story of barrenness and breakthrough was not just personal, it revealed the nature of God. Elkanah and Hannah returned home, but the boy Samuel remained at Shiloh and served the Lord under Eli's guidance. Every year, Hannah would return with a new robe she had made for Samuel. God also blessed Hannah with more children, 3 sons and 2 daughters, because she had given Samuel to the Lord with a willing heart. Now the story shifts to Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They were described as wicked men who had no regard for the Lord. When people came to offer sacrifices, they would forcibly take the best parts of the meat before it was offered to God, showing greed and disrespect for sacred practices. Worse still, they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tabernacle. These actions were not just sinful, they corrupted the entire worship system. Eli was aware of what his sons were doing and confronted them. He said, "Why do you do such things? I hear of your wicked deeds from all these people. If someone sins against another, God may mediate. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede?" But they did not listen, because their hearts were hardened. In contrast, young Samuel continued to grow in favor with both the Lord and the people. A man of God then came to Eli with a sobering message. He reminded Eli that his family had once been chosen by God to serve as priests, to offer sacrifices, and to wear the ephod. But now, because Eli honored his sons more than he honored God, allowing them to grow fat from the offerings of Israel, judgment was coming. The man of God declared that Eli's household would no longer serve in the priesthood with honor. There would be no old men in his line, and his sons would both die on the same day. A new faithful priest would be raised up, one who would serve with a heart that truly followed the Lord. Young Samuel was ministering in the tabernacle, and during that time the word of the Lord was rare. Visions were not common. One night, while Eli was lying down in his usual place and Samuel was resting nearby, something extraordinary happened. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and the tabernacle was quiet. The Lord called out, "Samuel!" Thinking it was Eli, the boy ran to him and said, "Here I am. You called me." But Eli replied, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." This happened a second time. Again, Samuel heard his name and ran to Eli. And again, Eli told him he had not called. When it happened the third time, Eli finally understood what was happening. He told Samuel, "Go and lie down again. And if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" Samuel returned to his bed. The Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel!" This time, the boy answered just as Eli had taught him, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Then the Lord gave Samuel his first prophetic message, a difficult one. God told Samuel that he was going to bring judgment upon Eli's family because of the wickedness of his sons. Eli knew what they were doing, but he did not stop them. Therefore, The Lord declared that the guilt of Eli's family would never be atoned for by sacrifice or offering. In the morning, Samuel was afraid to tell Eli what he had heard. But Eli called for him and insisted he speak everything without hiding a single word. So Samuel told him everything. Eli responded with resignation, saying, "He is the Lord. Let him do what is good in his eyes." As Samuel grew, the Lord was with him, and none of his words fell to the ground. All Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, recognized that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and revealed his word to Samuel there. At this point, the Israelites went out to fight the Philistines. In the first battle, Israel was defeated, losing about 4,000 men. The elders asked, "Why has the Lord allowed this to happen?" But rather than seeking God's direction through prayer or prophecy, they chose to bring the Ark of the Covenant from Shiloh, thinking it would guarantee victory. Hophni and Phinehas carried the ark to the battlefield, and when it arrived, all Israel shouted so loudly that the ground shook. The Philistines heard the commotion and were initially afraid. They said, "God has come into the camp." They remembered the stories of how the God of Israel had defeated Egypt. But instead of running, they rallied, saying, "Be strong and act like men." In the next battle, Israel was crushed. 30,000 foot soldiers died. The Ark of God was captured. Hophni and Phinehas were both killed, just as God had warned. A Benjaminite ran from the battle to Shiloh with torn clothes and dust on his head. He told the people what had happened, and the whole town cried out. Eli, now very old and nearly blind, was sitting by the gate. When he heard the cries, he asked what had happened. The messenger told him that Israel had fled, his sons were dead, and the ark was captured. When Eli heard that the ark was gone, he fell backward off his chair, broke his neck, and died. He had judged Israel for 40 years. His daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near labor. When she heard the news of the ark being taken, her husband and father-in-law dead, she went into labor and gave birth. As she was dying, she named the child Ichabod, meaning, "The glory has departed from Israel," because the ark of God had been captured. After the Philistines captured the ark of God, they took it from the battlefield at Ebenezer to their city of Ashdod. In Ashdod, they brought the ark into the temple of their god Dagon and placed it beside the idol statue. This was meant to show that their God had defeated the God of Israel. But God was about to show them that no idol could stand before him. The next morning, the people of Ashdod found that the statue of Dagon had fallen on its face before the ark. It looked as though Dagon was bowing down in worship. They quickly set the statue back in its place, thinking it was just a coincidence. But the following morning, they found something more shocking. The statue had fallen again, but this time its head and hands were broken off, lying on the threshold. Only the trunk of the idol remained. This frightened the people. From that day on, no one in Ashdod would step on the threshold of Dagon's temple. But that wasn't all. The Lord began to afflict the people of Ashdod and its surroundings with painful tumors. Panic spread. The people said, "The ark of the God of Israel must not stay here with us because his hand is heavy upon us and our god Dagon." So, they decided to send the ark to the city of Gath, another Philistine city. But when the ark arrived in Gath, the same troubles followed. The people there were struck with tumors, and panic took over. Then they tried sending it to Ekron, but the people of Ekron cried out, "They have brought the ark of the God of Israel here to kill us." Everywhere the ark went, the people were terrified, and outbreaks of tumors followed. Death and fear filled the cities. The cry of the city went up to heaven, and the Philistines realized they could not keep the ark any longer. The ark of the Lord remained in Philistine territory for 7 months. During that time, the Philistines suffered greatly. Finally, they called their priests and diviners and asked, "What should we do with the ark of the Lord? How can we send it back to its place?" The religious leaders said, "Do not send it back empty. Send a guilt offering with it. That way, perhaps he will lift his hand from you." They suggested sending 5 gold tumors and 5 gold rats, representing the 5 rulers of the Philistine cities. This offering was symbolic of the plagues they had suffered. They hoped it would show respect to the God of Israel and stop the punishment. To test if the plagues were truly from God or just a coincidence, they prepared a new cart and attached 2 cows that had never been yoked and had calves. They took the calves away from the mothers and shut them in pens. Then they placed the ark and the gold offerings on the cart. They reasoned that if the cows, separated from their calves, walked straight toward Israelite territory, it would prove that the Lord had been behind the disasters. To everyone's amazement, the cows went straight down the road to Beth Shemesh, lowing as they went without turning to the right or left. The Philistine rulers followed at a distance to see what would happen. The people of Beth Shemesh were in the fields harvesting wheat when they looked up and saw the ark coming. They rejoiced. The cart came to a stop beside a large rock. The people chopped up the wood and sacrificed the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. Levites took down the ark and the gold offerings and placed them on the rock. However, some of the men of Beth Shemesh looked into the ark, which was forbidden. Because of their irreverence, God struck down 70 of them. The people mourned and said, "Who can stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God?" They sent messengers to the people of Kiriath Jearim, asking them to come and take the ark. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took the ark of the Lord. They brought it to the house of Abinadab, where his son Eleazar was consecrated to take care of it. The ark remained there for 20 years. During that time, the people of Israel began to mourn and seek the Lord again. Samuel, now grown and recognized as a prophet and leader, told them, "If you are truly returning to the Lord with all your hearts, then rid yourselves of the foreign gods and commit yourselves fully to Him." He called for a complete return to God, not just words, but action. The people obeyed. They removed the idols of Baal and Ashtoreth and served only the Lord. Samuel then gathered them at Mizpah for a solemn assembly. There they fasted and confessed, "We have sinned against the Lord." But when the Philistines heard that Israel had gathered at Mizpah, they prepared to attack. The Israelites were afraid and begged Samuel, "Do not stop crying out to the Lord our God for us." So Samuel took a lamb and offered it as a burnt sacrifice, crying out to the Lord on behalf of Israel. As Samuel was offering the sacrifice, the Lord thundered with a mighty sound against the Philistines. They were thrown into confusion and defeated by Israel. The men of Israel chased them and struck them down along the way. After the battle, Samuel set up a stone between Mizpah and Shen. He named it Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." It became a lasting reminder of God's deliverance. From that day forward, the Philistines were subdued. They did not invade Israel again during Samuel's lifetime. The towns that had been taken from Israel were restored, and there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. Samuel judged Israel all his life. Every year he traveled to Bethel, Gilgal, Mizpah, and returned to his home in Ramah, where he also held court and built an altar to the Lord. As Samuel grew older, he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. His firstborn was Joel, and his second was Abijah. They served in Beersheba. But unlike their father, his sons did not walk in his ways. They were greedy, accepted bribes, and perverted justice. The same pattern of failed leadership was repeating itself. The elders of Israel gathered and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said, "You are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, just like all the other nations have." Their request was not just for leadership, it was for a new kind of system, one that mirrored the world around them. Samuel was troubled by this request. He prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said, "Listen to the people. It is not you they have rejected, but me as their king." God explained that Israel had been rejecting him since the day he brought them out of Egypt. Now they wanted a human king instead of divine leadership. But God told Samuel to warn them. Samuel gathered the people and told them exactly what having a king would mean. He will take your sons and make them serve in his army. He will appoint commanders, force them to plow his fields and reap his harvests and make weapons of war. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will take the best of your fields, vineyards, and olive groves and give them to his officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain, your livestock, and even your servants. And when that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you chose, but the Lord will not answer you. Despite the warning, the people refused to listen. They said, "No. We want a king over us. Then we will be like the other nations, with a king to lead us and fight our battles." Samuel listened to all they said and then repeated it to the Lord. The Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." So Samuel told the men of Israel, "Go back to your towns." There was a man from the tribe of Benjamin named Kish. He was wealthy and influential, and he had a son named Saul. Saul was a striking young man, handsome and tall. In fact, he stood head and shoulders above everyone else in Israel. From the outside, Saul looked like someone destined for leadership, someone who could easily command attention. One day, some of Kish's donkeys went missing. He told his son Saul, "Take one of the servants with you and go look for the donkeys." So Saul set out with his servant. They traveled through several regions, Ephraim, Shalisha, and Shalem, but found no trace of the animals. They continued on through the territory of Benjamin, but still the donkeys were nowhere to be found. After days of searching, Saul said to his servant, "Let's go back, or my father will stop worrying about the donkeys and start worrying about us." But the servant had an idea. He said, "There's a man of God in this town. He's highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go see him. Maybe he can tell us where the donkeys are." Saul agreed, but asked, "What can we offer him? We have no food left." The servant replied, "I have a small silver coin. I can give it to him." So they went toward the town where the prophet, Samuel, was staying. As they approached, they met some young women coming out to draw water. Saul asked, "Is the seer here?" The women answered, "Yes, he's just ahead. Hurry! He came today for a sacrifice at the high place. You'll find him before he goes up to eat." Meanwhile, the Lord had spoken to Samuel the day before. God told him, "Tomorrow I will send you a man from the tribe of Benjamin. Anoint him as the leader of my people. He will save them from the Philistines, for I have heard their cry." So when Samuel saw Saul approaching, the Lord said, "This is the man I told you about." Saul walked up to Samuel and asked, "Can you tell me where the seer's house is?" Samuel answered, "I am the seer. Go up to the high place with me today, and you will eat with me. In the morning, I will tell you what's on your heart." As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, don't worry. They've been found. And don't you know that you and your family are the hope of Israel?" Saul was stunned. He said, "But I'm from Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least in the tribe. Why would you say such a thing to me?" Samuel didn't answer directly. Instead, he brought Saul and his servant into the banquet hall and gave Saul the place of honor among about 30 guests. He asked the cook to bring the special portion that had been set aside. It was the best cut of meat, and Samuel said, "This was kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you even before I invited the others." The next morning, as dawn broke, Samuel called up to Saul on the rooftop where he had slept. He said, "Get ready, I will send you on your way." As they walked together to the edge of the town, Samuel told the servant to go ahead. Then he said to Saul, "Stay here a moment, and I will give you a message from God." Samuel took a flask of oil, poured it on Saul's head, kissed him, and said, "Has not the Lord anointed you ruler over his inheritance?" This was a private anointing, just between Samuel and Saul, but it marked the beginning of something huge. Saul would be Israel's first king. Samuel then gave Saul specific signs to confirm God's choice. He said, "When you leave here, you will meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb. They'll tell you the donkeys have been found and that your father is worried about you. Then you'll go to the Oak of Tabor, where you'll meet 3 men on their way to worship God. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another 3 loaves of bread, and another a jug of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves which you should accept. But then," Samuel continued, "you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. There you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place, playing instruments and prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come upon you powerfully, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. After all this happens, do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you." Samuel also told Saul to go ahead to Gilgal and wait 7 days. Samuel would meet him there and give further instructions. As Saul turned to leave, God changed his heart, and all the signs that Samuel predicted came true that day. When Saul met the group of prophets, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he began to prophesy. The people who knew Saul were shocked. They said, "What has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" Afterward, Saul went home, but he didn't tell anyone about the anointing. Later, Samuel gathered the tribes of Israel at Mizpah to publicly choose the king. The tribes came forward, and the tribe of Benjamin was selected by lot. Then the clan of Matri was chosen. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was chosen. But when they looked for him, he was nowhere to be found. They inquired of the Lord, and God revealed, "He has hidden himself among the supplies." They ran and brought him out, and when he stood before the people, he was taller than anyone else. Samuel said to all, "Do you see the man the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him." And the people shouted, "Long live the king!" Samuel explained the rights and responsibilities of kingship and wrote them down. Then the people went home, and Saul returned to Gibeah. Some brave men followed him, moved by God, but others despised him and said, "How can this man save us?" They brought him no gifts, yet Saul kept silent. Soon after Saul became king, a crisis revealed his strength. A brutal Ammonite king named Nahash laid siege to Jabesh-Gilead. The people of Jabesh pleaded for peace, but Nahash offered only one condition: "Let me gouge out the right eye of every man to disgrace all Israel." The elders of Jabesh asked for 7 days to seek help. If no one came, they would surrender. Messengers came to Gibeah and told the people what was happening. When Saul heard the news, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and his anger blazed. Saul took a pair of oxen, cut them into pieces, and sent them throughout Israel with messengers saying, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who doesn't follow Saul and Samuel into battle." The fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out as one army, 330,000 strong. Saul divided the troops into 3 groups and launched a surprise attack early in the morning. The Ammonites were completely defeated. Not one of them remained together. The people were so amazed that they turned to Saul and said, "Where are those men who said, 'Shall Saul reign over us?' Bring them here and we'll kill them." But Saul said, "No one shall be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel." It was a moment of humility and unity. Samuel then said, "Let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingship." So the people gathered, and there they made Saul king before the Lord. They offered sacrifices and rejoiced greatly. After Saul was confirmed as king, Samuel addressed the people in a farewell speech of sorts, not because he was leaving, but because his role as sole leader was shifting. He stood before them and said, "I have listened to you and set a king over you. Now the king is your leader, but I am old and gray, and my sons are here with you. I have led you from my youth until now." Samuel then invited judgment. "Here I stand. Testify against me in the presence of the Lord. Have I taken anyone's ox? Have I cheated or oppressed anyone?" The people responded, "You have not wronged us or taken anything from anyone." Then Samuel reminded them of their history. "The Lord appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors out of Egypt. But when they forgot the Lord, he allowed enemies like Sisera and the Philistines to oppress them. Then they cried out, and the Lord sent judges to deliver them." He explained that asking for a king was another act of distrust. "When Nahash attacked, you said, 'We want a king,' even though the Lord your God was your king." Still Samuel reassured them, "If you and your king fear the Lord and serve him faithfully, it will go well. But if you rebel, his hand will be against you." To prove that his words carried divine authority, Samuel called on the Lord to send thunder and rain. It was harvest season, a time when rain was rare, but God sent a storm. The people were terrified and said, "Pray to the Lord your God for us, that we do not die." Samuel replied gently, "Do not be afraid. Yes, you have done evil in asking for a king, but do not turn away from the Lord. Serve him with all your heart. Do not follow empty things that cannot help you. For the Lord will not reject his people, for his great name's sake." He concluded with this vow, "As for me, far be it from me to sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you. I will teach you the good and right way. Fear the Lord and serve him faithfully. But if you continue to do evil, both you and your king will perish." Saul had been king for only a short time when serious trouble began to stir. He chose 3,000 men from among the Israelites to form a standing army. 2,000 were with him in the town of Michmash and the hills of Bethel, and 1,000 were with his son Jonathan in Gibeah. The rest of the people were sent home. Jonathan launched a surprise attack on a Philistine outpost at Geba and defeated them. Word quickly spread, and the Philistines were furious. Saul blew a trumpet throughout the land, calling the people to war. He wanted everyone to hear the message, "Let the Hebrews hear." But the way it spread made it sound like Saul had attacked, and now the Philistines were coming to crush them. The Philistines assembled a terrifying army. 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and countless foot soldiers. They camped at Michmash, ready to overwhelm Israel. The Israelites were terrified. They saw they were outmatched and began hiding in caves, thickets, rocks, and pits. Some even fled across the Jordan River. Saul remained at Gilgal, where Samuel had instructed him to wait 7 days for further direction. But as the 7th day approached and Samuel had not yet arrived, Saul's men began to scatter. Fearful and desperate to hold the army together, Saul took matters into his own hands. He offered the burnt offering himself, something only a priest or prophet should do. Just as he finished the sacrifice, Samuel arrived. Saul went out to greet him, but Samuel's face was heavy with grief. "What have you done?" he asked. Saul replied, "When I saw that the people were scattering and you hadn't come, I thought the Philistines would attack me. So I forced myself to offer the burnt offering." Samuel said, "You have acted foolishly. You didn't keep the command the Lord gave you. If you had, He would have established your kingdom forever. But now, your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after His own heart." Then Samuel left. Saul counted his troops again and found he had only about 600 men left. The rest of the chapter paints a bleak picture. The Philistines had sent raiding parties in all directions, and the Israelites had no weapons. Only Saul and Jonathan had swords or spears. The enemy had so completely dominated the land that blacksmiths were forbidden in Israel, so the people had to go to Philistine territory just to sharpen their farming tools. Jonathan, Saul's son, could not sit still while Israel was paralyzed by fear. Without telling his father, he took his armor-bearer and said, "Let's go over to the Philistine outpost." He believed that God could save by many or by few. Jonathan came up with a plan. He said, "We'll show ourselves to them. If they tell us to wait, we'll stay. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' then that will be the sign that God has given them into our hands." The Philistines saw them and mocked, "Come up and we'll teach you a lesson." That was the sign Jonathan had asked for. So he and his armor-bearer climbed up the cliff on hands and knees. When they reached the top, they attacked with courage, killing about 20 men in a small area. Then panic struck the entire Philistine camp. God sent a trembling through the ground, a divine earthquake. The Philistines turned on each other in confusion. Saul saw the chaos from afar. When he learned that Jonathan was missing, he called the priest to bring the ark. But the noise in the Philistine camp kept growing louder, and Saul interrupted the priest, saying, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul led his army into battle. Even the Hebrews who had previously been with the Philistines turned against them. Those hiding in caves came out and joined the fight. The Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle moved on to Beth-aven. But there was trouble in the camp. Saul had made a rash oath, saying, "Cursed be anyone who eats before evening, before I've avenged myself on my enemies." Because of this, no one ate anything all day. Jonathan, who hadn't heard the oath, dipped his staff in honey and ate it, gaining new strength. But the soldiers warned him about the oath. Jonathan criticized his father's decision, saying, "My father has troubled the land. If the troops had eaten, the victory would have been even greater." That night, the troops were so hungry they began eating animals with the blood still in them, breaking God's law. Saul tried to fix it by building an altar and instructing them to drain the blood. He also wanted to continue fighting, but the priest advised asking God. When Saul received no answer, he assumed someone had sinned and made a vow to punish them, even if it was Jonathan. Lots were cast, and Jonathan was identified. He confessed to eating honey, and Saul declared that he must die. But the people intervened. "Shall Jonathan die, who brought this great victory?" they asked. They rescued Jonathan, and he was spared. The Lord gave Samuel a clear command for Saul: "Go and attack the Amalekites and destroy everything: men, women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys." This was judgment for what Amalek had done to Israel generations earlier. Saul gathered an army, 200,000 soldiers, and attacked the Amalekites. He defeated them but did not fully obey. He spared Agag, the king, and kept the best of the livestock. Everything they found weak or useless they destroyed. But the Lord spoke to Samuel, "I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and not carried out my instructions." Samuel was troubled and cried out to God all night. Early the next morning, Samuel went to meet Saul. On the way, he was told that Saul had gone to Carmel and built a monument to himself. When Samuel found him, Saul greeted him cheerfully, saying, "The Lord bless you, I have carried out the Lord's command." But Samuel asked, "Then what is this bleating of sheep and lowing of cattle that I hear?" Saul quickly blamed the people. "They spared the best to sacrifice to the Lord, but we destroyed everything else." Samuel replied, "Stop. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night." Saul said, "Tell me." Samuel said, "Though you were once small in your own eyes, you became the head of the tribes of Israel. The Lord sent you on a mission. Why did you not obey? Why did you pounce on the plunder?" Saul insisted, "I did obey. I brought back Agag and destroyed the rest. The soldiers took the best animals to offer as sacrifices." Samuel answered with words that would echo through generations. "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings as much as in obedience? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen is better than the fat of rams. Rebellion is like the sin of witchcraft. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Saul admitted, "I have sinned. I was afraid of the people and gave in. Please forgive me and come back with me." But Samuel refused. As he turned to go, Saul grabbed his robe and tore it. Samuel said, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and given it to someone better than you." Samuel then ordered that Agag be brought to him. Agag came, thinking the danger had passed. But Samuel said, "As your sword has made women childless, so your mother will be childless among women." Then Samuel killed Agag before the Lord. Samuel went home, and Saul went to his house in Gibeah. Samuel never saw Saul again. The prophet mourned for him, and the Lord regretted making Saul king. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul? Fill your horn with oil and go. I have chosen one of Jesse's sons in Bethlehem to be king." Samuel was afraid. "If Saul hears, he will kill me." The Lord instructed him to go under the cover of a sacrifice. "Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do." Samuel went to Bethlehem, and the elders were nervous at his arrival. "Do you come in peace?" they asked. "Yes," he replied. He invited Jesse and his sons to the sacrifice. When he saw Eliab, Jesse's oldest, Samuel thought, "Surely this is the one." But the Lord said, "Do not look at his appearance or height. I have rejected him. The Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." One by one, Jesse's sons passed before Samuel, but none were chosen. Samuel asked, "Are these all your sons?" Jesse said, "There is still the youngest, but he's tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him." David came in, young, ruddy, with bright eyes and handsome, and the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel anointed him in the presence of his brothers, and from that day the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Meanwhile, the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and a troubling spirit tormented him. His servants suggested music as a remedy. One of them mentioned David, a skilled harp player, brave, wise, and the Lord was with him. Saul sent for David, and David came and served him. Saul loved him greatly, and David became his armor-bearer. When the evil spirit came upon Saul, David would play the harp, and Saul would feel better. The Philistines gathered their armies again, this time for a battle near a place called Soko in Judah. King Saul and the Israelite army also gathered and camped in the valley of Elah. The two forces stood facing each other on opposite hills, with the valley between them. Every morning and evening, something terrifying happened that froze the hearts of Israel's soldiers. A giant warrior named Goliath came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet and full body armor so heavy that no ordinary man could carry it. He carried a massive spear with an iron tip that alone weighed about 15 pounds. A shield-bearer walked in front of him. Goliath stood between the two armies and shouted toward Israel, "Why have you come out to fight? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man to come down and fight me. If he kills me, we will serve you. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves." Goliath repeated this challenge every day for 40 days, morning and evening. The Israelites were terrified. No one dared face him. Among the Israelites was a young shepherd named David. His 3 oldest brothers were in Saul's army. David, being the youngest, went back and forth from Bethlehem to bring food and check on his brothers. One day, David's father Jesse told him, "Take this roasted grain and bread to your brothers, and bring back news of how they are doing." David arrived at the camp just as the army was lining up for battle. He left the supplies with the keeper and ran to greet his brothers. While he was talking with them, Goliath stepped forward again, shouting the same challenge. This time, David heard it. The soldiers around him said, "Do you see this man? Whoever kills him will receive great riches from the king, and the king will give him his daughter in marriage and freedom from taxes." And David asked, "What will be done for the one who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" His oldest brother Eliab overheard and grew angry. "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness?" he snapped. But David replied, "What have I done now? Can't I even speak?" Word reached Saul about what David had said, and David was brought before the king. David said boldly, "Let no one lose heart. I will fight this Philistine." Saul replied, "You're only a boy. He's been a warrior since youth." But David told him, "I have killed lions and bears protecting my father's sheep. The Lord who saved me from them will save me from this Philistine too." Reluctantly, Saul agreed and said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." He dressed David in his own armor, but David couldn't move well. He took it off and chose 5 smooth stones from a stream. With only his sling, shepherd's staff, and courage, he approached the giant. Goliath looked down at David and mocked, "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" He cursed David and said, "Come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals." But David replied with unshakable faith, "You come against me with a sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. This battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." David ran toward the giant, reached into his bag, and slung a stone. It hit Goliath in the forehead, and the giant fell face down. David ran up, took Goliath's own sword and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Israel pursued them, and there was a great victory. David returned with Goliath's head, and Saul asked, "Whose son are you?" David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." After David's victory, Saul brought him into his service permanently. From that moment, Saul's son Jonathan formed a deep bond with David. He loved David as himself. Jonathan made a covenant of friendship with him and gave David his robe, tunic, sword, bow, and belt, symbols of loyalty and royalty. David quickly rose in rank. Whatever mission Saul gave him, he succeeded. The people and even Saul's officers were impressed. But trouble began when David returned from battle. As the army entered the city, women came out dancing and singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Saul was furious. "They've credited David with tens of thousands, but me with only thousands. What's left but the kingdom?" From that moment, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The next day, a harmful spirit from God came over Saul. While David played the harp to calm him, Saul hurled a spear at him twice. But David escaped both times. Saul became afraid of David because he saw that the Lord was with him. So he removed David from his court and made him a commander, hoping he would be killed in battle. But the more Saul tried to destroy David, the more David succeeded. Seeing this, Saul offered his daughter Merab in marriage to David, hoping to trap him. But David said humbly, "Who am I? What is my family that I should become the king's son-in-law?" So Merab was given to another man. But Saul's younger daughter Michal loved David. When Saul heard this, he was pleased. He thought she would be a snare to him. He told David he could marry Michal if he brought back 100 Philistine foreskins. Saul thought David would surely die trying. But David succeeded, bringing back 200. Saul had no choice but to give Michal to him. Saul grew more fearful, and his hatred of David deepened. Despite Saul's hatred, David became more and more successful, and his name was highly honored. Saul's hatred reached a breaking point. He told Jonathan and all his attendants to kill David, but Jonathan warned David, saying, "My father wants to kill you. Go into hiding. I'll speak to him and let you know what happens." Jonathan spoke well of David to his father. He reminded Saul of how David had risked his life to kill Goliath and had brought great victory to Israel. "Why would you sin against innocent blood by killing David without cause?" Saul listened and took an oath. "As surely as the Lord lives, David shall not be put to death." So David returned to court. But war broke out again, and David went to battle and won. This reignited Saul's rage. A harmful spirit came upon Saul again, and he tried to kill David with a spear while David played music. David fled that night. Saul sent men to watch David's house and kill him in the morning. Michal warned David, "If you don't escape tonight, you'll be dead by morning." She helped him out through a window, and he escaped. Then she placed a household idol in his bed and covered it with a blanket to fool the guards. When Saul sent men to arrest David, they found the decoy. Saul asked Michal, "Why did you deceive me?" She lied, saying, "He threatened to kill me if I didn't help him." David fled to Samuel at Ramah and told him everything. Together they stayed at Naioth. When Saul heard this, he sent men to capture David, but each group that arrived began prophesying instead. Even when Saul came himself, the Spirit of God came upon him, and he began prophesying too, stripped of his royal dignity. He lay all day and night in a prophetic trance. People said, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" Still in hiding, David met secretly with Jonathan. "What have I done?" he asked. Why is your father trying to kill me?" Jonathan was stunned. "He tells me everything. He would have told me if he planned to kill you." David said, "Your father knows we're close. He's hiding it from you, but I swear I'm one step from death." So Jonathan agreed to help. They made a plan. David would hide in a field for 3 days. During a festival, his seat would be empty. If Saul noticed and got angry, it would reveal his intent. Jonathan would then go to the field with a servant to shoot arrows. Depending on what he said aloud, David would know if it was safe to return or not. They renewed their covenant of friendship. Jonathan said, "May the Lord be between us and our descendants forever." On the 3rd day, Saul asked why David was missing. Jonathan made an excuse, that David had gone to Bethlehem. Saul's anger exploded. He shouted, "You son of a rebellious woman! Don't you know that as long as David lives, your kingdom is not secure?" Saul hurled his spear at Jonathan, and Jonathan knew the truth. His father wanted David dead. Grieved and furious, he went to the field the next morning with a boy. He shot arrows beyond the target and called out, "The arrow is beyond you." This was the signal for David to run. After the boy left, David came out. The 2 friends embraced and wept. Jonathan said, "Go in peace. We have sworn friendship in the name of the Lord." And so David fled, leaving behind everything, his home, his wife, his place in court, but not his friend. Their bond remained, though danger was closing in. David was now on the run, alone, without food, without a weapon, and a home. He fled to the city of Nob, where the tabernacle was located and where the priest Ahimelech served. When Ahimelech saw David approaching alone, he was afraid. It was unusual for a royal servant to travel without guards or an escort. He asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David, trying to protect himself and possibly the priest, told a half-truth. "The king sent me on a secret mission," he said. "My men are nearby. I came in a hurry and didn't have time to bring food or weapons. Do you have anything here?" Ahimelech replied, "I don't have ordinary bread, only the holy bread, which is set apart for priests. But if your men have kept themselves pure, they may eat it." David assured him that they had, and Ahimelech gave him the consecrated bread that had been replaced that day with fresh loaves from before the Lord. While this was happening, a man named Doeg the Edomite, one of Saul's officials, was there that day detained before the Lord. He silently witnessed everything. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a sword or spear? I left in such a hurry I didn't bring my weapons." Ahimelech said, "The only weapon here is the sword of Goliath, whom you killed in the valley of Elah. It's wrapped in cloth and behind the ephod. You may take it." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." Still fearing for his life, David fled to Gath, a Philistine city, ironically the hometown of Goliath. He thought he could hide in enemy territory. But the servants of Achish, the king of Gath, recognized him. "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands?" David panicked when he realized they knew who he was. To escape danger, he pretended to be insane. He scratched the gates and let saliva run down his beard. Achish, seeing this, said to his men, "Why bring this madman to me? Am I short of lunatics? Get him out of here!" And so David escaped once again. David left Gath and found refuge in the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and extended family heard, they joined him there. Slowly others began to come, men who were distressed, in debt, or discontented with life under Saul's rule. David became their leader. About 400 men gathered around him. From being alone and hunted, he was now the leader of a growing, desperate army. David then went to Mizpah in Moab and asked the king of Moab, "Please, let my parents stay with you until I know what God will do for me." The king agreed, and David's family found safety in Moab while he remained in hiding. The prophet Gad, who was with David, told him, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Go to the land of Judah." So David left the cave and moved to the forest of Hereth. Meanwhile, Saul was back in Gibeah, sitting under a tree with his officials. He was furious. "Listen, men of Benjamin," he shouted. "Has David promised you fields and vineyards? Is that why you're siding with him? No one told me when my son made a covenant with him. You've all betrayed me." Doeg the Edomite spoke up. "I saw David come to Ahimelech the priest at Nob. Ahimelech gave him food and the sword of Goliath. Saul sent for Ahimelech and all the priests of Nob. When they arrived, Saul accused them of conspiring against him. Ahimelech answered with honesty, 'Who is more loyal than David? He's your son-in-law, captain of your guard, and highly respected. I had no idea of any conspiracy.' But Saul would not listen. He ordered his guards to kill the priests. The guards refused, but Doeg carried out the slaughter. He killed 85 priests who wore the linen ephod. Then he went to Nob and killed the men, women, children, infants, and animals. Only one son of Ahimelech escaped, Abiathar. He fled to David and told him everything. David was heartbroken. I knew when I saw Doeg there that he would tell Saul, 'I am responsible for the death of your family. Stay with me. You'll be safe.' David heard that the Philistines were attacking the town of Keilah, stealing grain and oppressing the people. Though he was in hiding, David inquired of the Lord, 'Shall I go and attack the Philistines?' The Lord said, 'Go. I will deliver them into your hands.' David's men were afraid. 'We're already in danger here in Judah. How can we go fight the Philistines?' David asked the Lord again. The answer was the same. 'Go. I will give you victory.' So David and his men went to Keilah and defeated the Philistines, saving the town. When Saul heard that David was in Keilah, he thought, 'God has handed him over to me. He's trapped in a town with gates and bars.' So he gathered his forces to attack. David learned of Saul's plan and asked Abiathar the priest to bring the ephod to inquire of God. 'Will Saul come down?' he asked. 'Yes,' the Lord answered. 'Will the people of Keilah hand me over to him?' 'Yes, they will.' So David and his men, now about 600, left Keilah and kept moving. Saul found out and called off the attack. David stayed in the wilderness, hiding in caves and forests. During this time, Jonathan came to David at Horesh and encouraged him. 'Don't be afraid,' he said. 'My father will not find you. You will be king, and I will be second to you. Even my father knows this.' They made a covenant again before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home. The Ziphites, residents of the area, went to Saul and said, 'David is hiding in our territory.' Saul thanked them and asked for more details. 'Find out where he is exactly, then I'll come.' David moved deeper into the wilderness. Saul searched but could not find him. At one point, Saul was closing in and David was nearly surrounded. But just then, a messenger arrived and told Saul, 'The Philistines are attacking!' So Saul broke off the pursuit. That place was named the Rock of Escape. After Saul returned from fighting the Philistines, he was told, 'David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi.' Saul took 3,000 of Israel's best soldiers and went to find him. Along the way, Saul entered a cave to relieve himself, not knowing David and his men were hiding deeper inside. David's men whispered, 'This is the day the Lord spoke of when he said he would deliver your enemy into your hands.' David quietly crept forward and cut off the corner of Saul's robe, but afterward his heart was troubled. "The Lord forbid that I should harm the Lord's anointed," he told his men. He restrained them from attacking Saul. When Saul left the cave and began walking away, David stepped out and called after him, "My lord the king." Saul turned, and David bowed low. He said, "Why do you listen to those who say, 'I want to harm you'? Today, the Lord delivered you into my hands in this cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, 'I will not harm the Lord's anointed. Look, here is the corner of your robe. I cut it, but did not kill you.'" David continued, "There is no evil or rebellion in my heart, yet you hunt me to take my life. May the Lord judge between us. May he avenge me, but I will not lift my hand against you. As the old saying goes, from evil people come evil deeds. But I will not harm you." David spoke humbly, calling himself a dead dog or a flea before Saul. "Why are you chasing me?" he asked. "Let the Lord be our judge." When Saul heard David's voice, he wept. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well even though I tried to kill you. Today you have shown kindness. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him go? May the Lord reward you." Then Saul said, "I know that you will surely be king and that the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Swear to me that you won't cut off my descendants or destroy my name." David swore. Then Saul went home, and David returned to his stronghold. Samuel, the prophet of Israel, died. All of Israel gathered to mourn him. They buried him at his home in Ramah. It was the end of an era. Samuel had led Israel faithfully from his youth, and his voice had guided kings and shepherds alike. After the funeral, David moved to the wilderness of Paran. There, we are introduced to a wealthy man named Nabal, who lived in Maon and owned land in Carmel. He was very rich, with 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. It was shearing season, a time of celebration and feasting. Nabal's name meant fool, and his behavior matched it. He was harsh and mean-spirited, but his wife Abigail was the opposite, wise, intelligent, and beautiful. David, still in hiding from Saul, heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. This was significant because David and his men had protected Nabal's shepherds in the wilderness. They had not stolen from them or harmed them. It was customary at shearing time to offer hospitality and gifts in return for such protection. So David sent 10 young men to greet Nabal with respect. They came in peace, saying, "Long life to you, peace to your house. We hear it is sheep shearing time. Our men protected your shepherds. Please give us whatever you can spare." But Nabal sneered at the messengers. "Who is this David? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I give my food to someone I don't even know?" He insulted David directly and sent the men away empty-handed. When David heard this, he was furious. "Put on your swords," he told his men. 400 armed themselves, while 200 stayed behind with the supplies. David was ready to wipe out Nabal's entire household. "It's been useless, everything I did to protect that man's property," David raged. "May God deal with me severely if I leave a single male alive by morning." Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants told Abigail what had happened. He praised David's men for their protection and warned that disaster was coming. Abigail acted quickly. She loaded donkeys with 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep, roasted grain, cakes of figs, and raisins. Without telling her husband, she set out to intercept David. As she approached, David and his men were coming toward her. Abigail got down from her donkey and bowed low. She said, "Please let me speak, my lord. Pay no attention to Nabal. His name means fool, and he lives up to it. The Lord has kept you from bloodshed today. Let this gift be given to your men. When the Lord makes you king, remember your servant." David was moved. He praised her wisdom. "Blessed be the Lord who sent you today. You kept me from killing in anger. If you hadn't come quickly, not one male would have been left by morning." David accepted the gifts and sent her home in peace. When Abigail returned, Nabal was drunk and feasting like a king. She waited until morning to tell him what had happened. When she did, his heart failed within him. He became like stone. 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard, he said, "Praise be to the Lord, who upheld my cause and kept me from evil." He sent word asking Abigail to become his wife. She humbly accepted, saying, "I am your servant." She quickly prepared and became David's wife. David also married Ahinoam of Jezreel, but Saul had given David's first wife Michal to another man named Palti. David was growing in strength, but so was the tension between him and Saul. The people of Ziph again betrayed David. They went to Saul and said, "David is hiding on the hill of Hachilah." Saul, once again swayed by his fear and pride, took 3,000 men and went to hunt David in the wilderness. David sent out scouts and confirmed Saul's location. One night, David and Abishai crept into Saul's camp while everyone was asleep. The Lord had put them into a deep sleep. They found Saul lying within the circle of his camp, with Abner, his general, nearby. Saul's spear was stuck in the ground beside his head. Abishai whispered, "Let me strike him now with his spear. I won't need to do it twice." But David said no. "Do not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Who can do so and be guiltless? The Lord will strike him down in his time, but I will not touch him." Instead, David took Saul's spear and water jug as proof. David and Abishai climbed a distant hill. Then David shouted to Abner, "Aren't you supposed to guard your master? Someone came to kill him, and you did nothing. Look, where is the king's spear?" Saul woke and recognized David's voice. "Is that your voice, David, my son?" he asked. David replied, "Why is my Lord pursuing me? What have I done? If the Lord has stirred you against me, let him accept an offering. But if men have done this, let them be cursed." Saul, deeply ashamed, said, "I have sinned. Come back, my son, I will not harm you again." David responded, "Here is your spear. Send one of your men to get it. May the Lord repay each one for his righteousness. I would not harm you, though you hunted me." Saul blessed David. "May you be blessed, my son David. You will do great things and surely triumph." Then they went their separate ways, David still in exile, Saul still a haunted king. Despite Saul's words, David knew he was still in danger. He thought, "One day Saul will kill me. The best thing I can do is escape to Philistine territory." So David and his 600 men went to Achish, king of Gath. David brought his wives, Abigail and Ahinoam, and all his men's families. Saul stopped hunting him when he heard David had fled to Gath. David asked Achish, "Why should I live in the royal city? Give me a place in the country." So Achish gave him Ziklag, and David made it his home. He stayed there for over a year and 4 months. During that time, David raided the enemies of Israel, the Geshurites, Girzites, and Amalekites, leaving no survivors. He took livestock, clothing, and valuables and returned to Achish, who trusted him completely. When Achish asked where he had raided, David misled him, saying he had attacked parts of Judah. Achish thought, "He's made himself an enemy of Israel. He will be my servant forever." But David was secretly protecting his own people while building trust with the Philistines. As war brewed again between the Philistines and Israel, Achish told David, "You must go with me into battle." David answered, "You will see what your servant can do." Achish promised, "Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life." Back in Israel, Saul saw the Philistine army gathering and was filled with fear. He tried to inquire of the Lord, but God did not answer, not by dreams, not by the Urim, and not by prophets. Desperate, Saul sought out a forbidden source, a medium or spiritist. Saul had previously removed all mediums from the land, but now he disguised himself and went by night to a woman at Endor. He said, "Consult a spirit for me. Bring up the one I name." The woman hesitated. "You know Saul has banned this. Why are you setting a trap?" Saul swore an oath. "No punishment will come to you." She asked, "Whom shall I bring up?" He answered, "Samuel." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out in fear, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul!" The king calmed her and asked, "What do you see?" She said, "I see a spirit rising from the earth, an old man in a robe." Saul bowed low to the ground. Samuel, now speaking from beyond the grave, said, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Saul pleaded, "The Philistines are attacking. God won't answer me. I need your guidance." Samuel responded with a grim truth. "Why ask me when the Lord has departed from you? The Lord has torn the kingdom from you and given it to David. You did not obey his command regarding Amalek. That is why this is happening. The Lord will deliver Israel and you into the Philistines' hands. Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. Israel will fall." Saul collapsed, terrified and weak. He had not eaten all day. The woman and his servants urged him to eat. She prepared a meal of bread and a fattened calf. After eating, Saul and his men left, walking back toward a battle he now knew he would not survive. The Philistines gathered their armies at Aphek, ready to march into battle against Israel. The 5 Philistine kings, or rulers, were reviewing their troops as they moved forward in units of hundreds and thousands. Among the ranks was an unusual sight, David and his men marching with King Achish of Gath. The other Philistine commanders were alarmed. "What are these Hebrews doing here?" they asked. Achish replied confidently, "That's David, the servant of Saul, king of Israel. He has been with me for over a year, and I've found no fault in him." But the commanders didn't trust David. They remembered his reputation. "Send him back," they insisted. "He must not go with us into battle. He could turn on us during the fight to gain favor with his former master. Isn't this the man they sing about? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." Achish called David aside and said, "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been honest in my eyes. I would gladly have you fight beside me, but the other commanders do not agree. Go back peacefully and do nothing to displease them." David, possibly feigning disappointment, asked, "But what have I done? Why can't I fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish repeated, "I know you have been good in my sight, but the other rulers do not trust you. Rise early, you and your men, and leave at daybreak." So David and his men got up early and left Philistine territory, returning to the city of Ziklag. Meanwhile, the Philistines moved forward to the battlefield at Jezreel. When David and his men arrived in Ziklag on the 3rd day, they were devastated by what they saw. The Amalekites had raided the Negev and attacked Ziklag while David was away. They had burned the city to the ground and had taken captive all the women and children, including David's 2 wives, Ahinoam and Abigail. But they did not kill anyone. They took them alive as prisoners. David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to cry. Their grief was so deep that it turned into anger. The men began talking about stoning David. Each was bitter over the loss of his family. David was greatly distressed, but he did something critical. He found strength in the Lord his God. David called for Abiathar the priest and said, "Bring me the ephod." He inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" And the Lord answered, "Pursue them. You will certainly overtake them and succeed in rescuing everyone." So David set out with his 600 men. When they reached the Besor valley, 200 were too exhausted to continue. David left them behind to guard the supplies while he and the remaining 400 moved forward. Along the way, they found an Egyptian servant left behind by the Amalekites because he was sick. David's men gave him food and water, and after he regained strength, they questioned him. He told them he had been part of the raiding party and had helped burn Ziklag. David asked, "Will you lead me to them?" The man said, "Swear by God you won't kill me or return me to my master, and I'll take you to them." The Egyptian led them to the Amalekite camp. The raiders were spread out, eating, drinking, and celebrating their victory. David and his men attacked at twilight and fought all night and into the next day. Not one of the Amalekites escaped, except for 400 young men who fled on camels. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken. Nothing was missing. He rescued both of his wives and brought back flocks and herds. The men declared the livestock as David's spoil. When they returned to the 200 men at Besor who had stayed behind, some of the soldiers didn't want to share the plunder with them, but David said, "No, my brothers, what the Lord has given us, we will share equally. The share of the one who stayed with the supplies will be the same as the one who went into battle." From that day forward, it became a statute and law in Israel. David also sent gifts from the plunder to the elders of Judah and to friends in various towns where he and his men had roamed, strengthening relationships that would matter in the days to come. While David was winning back his people in the south, a national tragedy was unfolding in the north. The Philistines fought hard against Israel on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. The Israelite army was overwhelmed. Many fell in battle. Saul's sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, were all killed. The fighting grew fierce around Saul himself. He was wounded by Philistine archers. Desperate and refusing to be captured alive, Saul turned to his armor-bearer and said, "Draw your sword and kill me, or these uncircumcised men will come and abuse me." But the armor-bearer was terrified and refused. So Saul fell on his own sword and died. When the armor-bearer saw this, he too fell on his sword and died beside his king. Thus Saul and his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men died that same day. When the Israelites living in the valley saw the army defeated and Saul dead, they abandoned their towns and fled. The Philistines moved in and occupied them. The next day, the Philistines came to strip the dead and found Saul and his sons on Mount Gilboa. They cut off Saul's head, stripped off his armor, and sent messengers throughout Philistine territory to proclaim their victory in temples and among their people. They placed Saul's armor in the temple of their gods and fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. But the people of Jabesh-Gilead, the same people Saul had once rescued in his early days as king, heard what had been done. Brave men marched through the night, retrieved the bodies of Saul and his sons, and brought them back. They burned the bodies, perhaps because they had been mutilated, and buried the bones under a tamarisk tree. They fasted for 7 days in mourning. Thus ends the book of 1 Samuel. The fall of Saul marked the close of one era and the beginning of another. Israel had lost its first king. Tragically, a man who began with promise but fell through fear and disobedience. But even in loss, hope was rising. David, once a shepherd and fugitive, was being prepared by God to step into the throne, not by force, but by faith, and with the heart of a servant king. This is the end. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. It really helps share God's word with more people. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you never miss out on powerful biblical teachings. Thanks for watching, and until next time, God bless you.